I'm Lydia.
I'm Ed.
We're friends with a playlist for everything. And it turns out we both have one called Survival Songs.
And it got us thinking, what are other people's survival songs?
So we thought we'd find out.
Welcome to Survival Songs,
A podcast where each episode our guest tells us about a song that gets them through the best and worst of times.
Sensitive topics might be discussed.
So look after yourself.
The show contains portions of copyrighted material.
We'd love for you to support and celebrate the artists by streaming, downloading and buying their brilliant music. And go give our guests a follow on social media.
Help us grow the community of Survival Song listeners by joining us over on Substack and add to our public playlist on Spotify. Links are in the show notes.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to Survival Songs. My name's Ed and today's guest is Dr. Rio Matchett. Rio lives and works in Leeds and is the new works and learning producer at Leeds Playhouse. She gained her PhD in literary modernism and queer theory from the University of Liverpool in 2022 and now leads in the MA in Dramaturgy at Leeds Conservatoire. She's also a massive advocate for new writers, ideas and companies here in Leeds. We're going to speak to Rio in a minute, but before we do, we're going to hear part of her survival song. This is Graceland 2 by Phoebe Bridges.
She could do anything she wants to. She could do whatever she wants to do. She could go home, but she's not going to.
So that was Graceland 2, the survival song choice of our guest today, Dr. Rio Matchett. Hey, Rio.
Hello.
How you doing? All right?
I'm good. I'm really good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So when did Graceland 2 first come into your life? When did you first hear it? And what was your experience when you first heard it?
I guess I quite embarrassingly came to Phoebe Bridges on TikTok during lockdown. There was a very specific dance that the kids were doing to Motion Sickness, which is one of her better known songs. And I was at the point of hysteria in lockdown when I was learning dances from TikTok, and found this song in it. And it was one of those that really spoke to a feeling that I'd had and not been able to put into words, motion sickness. And I loved it, and then went on a kind of Phoebe Bridges deep dive and stuck with her music, and then later down the line heard Graceland 2. And again, one of those songs that I felt like it was written for me and for my friends, which is the best kind of art. Yeah. And what was the kind of initial emotion when you heard it? What was like? Can you remember? Was there a point where you're like, oh my God, like you really sort of like connected with it? I think there are two sides to it. So I think the idea of the bit where she talks about being no longer a danger to herself or others.
No longer a danger to herself or others.
Kind of, we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but mental health problems really run in my family. That's a big part of our lives. And then I suppose what the song is about for me is friendship, and about loving someone through their periods of darkness. And then those first kind of moments, the other side of it, when you go, oh my God, we're not quite in that darkest place anymore. We've got through the other side. And I think that's what it really captures for me, that first little moment of just being able to breathe out, because it's not all perfect, but we're not in the worst place anymore.
Yeah, I think that breathing out thing's really like pertinent, right? You know, sort of like I think anyone who's been through mental health crisis kind of can really recognize that idea of like that moment. It's not like, oh, everything's sunshine and roses, but like just nothing. But there is that kind of like that greyness is lifted, right? And I think it really captures that. This song really captures that moment of like, yeah, that kind of like, oh shit, things do get better.
Yeah, totally. But also I love that in a way that's kind of really not sentimental. Like, you know, they all go hang out and get high and just eat a bunch of crackers on the floor. That is such a kind of beautiful image of friendship in a way that feels really real and not sort of overly saccharine.
Yeah. It's an interesting, and you've kind of answered it, but like, what does survival mean to you? Like, there's sort of, it's, you know, because it's obviously we talk about survival songs, but, and I suppose for the different guests we've had on, that idea of survival felt different. And so I suppose, how did you interpret it?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. I guess survival for me means walking towards having no fear. And it's not necessarily about ever getting there. But I think survival is the process and the intention to keep walking in that direction.
Because I think we sort of sold this idea that like, hey, happiness is like a destination, right? We're like, you know, like this idea that like, we're going to arrive at happiness, but actually happiness is the time we walk through. And it's the strength to keep walking once you've been through the happy bit, right? That's sort of like, oh, I know that I've just been through Happy Town, but now I've got to keep going, right?
Yeah. And knowing that when you're in the really shitty moments, you've just got to keep walking. And it is shit. It's really hard. It's really hard sometimes, but I really believe that everything passes. And sometimes all you can do is hold on. Survival is giving yourself permission not to thrive all the time, just to keep existing until you become thriving again. That's
brilliant. Oh, that's really, I've not heard it put like that. That's really great. Permission not to thrive is, I think why I love it is because we live in this sort of like hustle culture, right? And, you know, especially in the arts, which, you know, we both work in, this idea that we have to hustle all the time and we're like, you know, like have to be busy all the time. Productivity and that kind of toxic productivity is so real. And if you're not busy, you're somehow failing. And if you're failing, you're sinking.
Totally. And I guess particularly thinking about mental health, you know, I think there are lots of mental health issues, mental illnesses, which it's helpful to kind of view through a medical model. But a lot of them, I think, are just products of the world and the systems that we work in. And I think a lot of what we call mental illness often is quite a rational reaction to an irrational world. Yeah. It doesn't work. And then we have to have a word for when people can't live with the fact it doesn't work. And all the, you know, layers of systemic privilege and opportunity and things that come with that. You know, like sanity or insanity is a descriptive word rather than prescriptive, right? It's the thing that we've all as a society decided at any point is not the norm, which is why those definitions change. You know, less than, 50 years ago, being homosexual was insane. You would be diagnosed as insane. And it's society that kind of changes and keeps moving those goalposts.
And I think what this song does is it takes you to a place that kind of removes all that noise, like those simple, that like the sitting in the crackers, like driving in the car, that kind of putting the radio on, singing loud. It's like, it's such a direct channel to the basics that make you so happy, because it's always those stuff. It's never the kind of like the big like things that you think are going to be life changing. It's always like, I'm here with the people I love most and just things are okay.
Yeah, totally that. And I think like joy and laughter are two of the biggest political tools we have. And one of the most loving things you can do for a friend is just to like be joyful with them and laugh. And sometimes that's really hard when they're not feeling in that place. But the things that I really remember as being the great acts of love from my friends that I've been on the receiving end of, a lot of them were, you know, the moments when they kind of quietly sat with me in the dark times, but more of them actually are the silly ones. That's the gift, I think, of friendship is being able to just be silly with someone.
I read a really great book about by Ed Zwick about kind of creation and kind of filmmaking, and he talks about how a film could never be too funny, and the reason why he thinks that is because the minute you laugh, you let everything go. And like you are at your most vulnerable when you're laughing, not when you're crying, but when you're laughing, when you kind of, and I love as a concept and you know, having kind of worked on some great shows where those kind of your emotions are raw, you know, like, and shows that you've been brilliant sport of like Ava and the Lighthouse, both of which are brilliant and heartfelt, but really funny in places and silly. And I think when you give people permission to laugh, it allows them to then open up and feel so much more. And this song like is a real kind of like celebration of that stuff, right?
Yeah, and I love how it sort of represents being on both sides of that friendship, being the person that has been sectioned or deeply unwell or whatever it is, and the moment of kind of stepping back into the world, but also being the friend waiting for them on the other side, and that moment when your friend steps back into the world with you. I think it's beautiful. I listen to it whenever I feel like far away from my friends who have been there with me.
Oh, that's really, so it's like a kind of like literally a direct line to them.
Oh, 100%. And when I listen to it, I picture really specific friends. I think about my friend Ruth and Martin, and I could list off a whole reel of names, because it feels such a literal depiction of kind of moments in our lives over the last 10 years.
I always think songs have a moment that you're waiting for. There's like a line or like a guitar phrase. What is there just a bit where you every time you just go, it takes you there, it connects you?
I really love the line, "She knows she lived through it to get to this moment."
Said she knows she lived through it to get to this moment. Ate asleep.
Because God, yeah, like I have such a beautiful life. I have such a rich life full of such interesting and compassionate and exciting people and moments. And I'm so grateful to my younger self for surviving. And I wish I could go back and tell her, like, there will be so many moments that there will come a tipping point when the dark stuff, it's not even that it doesn't define you, it's that it's kind of irrelevant, because it was so, you live through it to get to this moment, but actually it's not this moment, it's constant. And I think it's a muscle to kind of practice seeing those moments and naming them, just saying out loud to yourself, God, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And I think you can almost like Pavlov's dog yourself into feeling it. But every time the sun shines and you go, God, I don't hate being alive. Every time someone makes you laugh, just I'm so happy. Yeah.
It's interesting. I hadn't really thought of the song about actually someone talking to themselves, and now you put it out, it's like, oh yeah, it's not necessarily talking to someone else, it's actually she's talking to herself.
It's both, I think. I also do it with friends. We do a thing every year where a bunch of my friends who were with me and supported me when I was sectioned, and at New Year every year we take like 6 bottles of Aldi Prosecco onto the beach in Liverpool, in Crosby, so you can see all of the fireworks reflecting off the Mersey, and we all just sing in a big circle and drink all of this shitty Prosecco from the bottle, and we all snog each other, and it's gorgeous, and often I'm like, God, we lived through it for this. And everybody's got their stuff, everybody's got their thing that they had to get through, their things that they have to get through, but those moments I'm like, yeah, that we lived through it for this.
I think what I continually love about survival songs is that every song just takes people to so many places, and I feel like so thanks for like taking me on your journey. I really appreciate it. And yeah, is there what are you up to at the moment? Tell me what's happening.
This week I'm in R&D, research and development, so sort of pre-rehearsals, for a murder mystery play that has integrated British Sign Language and audio description, and we're playing with the idea of delivering the clues in those different languages, so different portions of the audience get different clues at different times. Turns out it's incredibly complicated. So not sure, but yeah, really interesting idea and really fun as well. We've talked a lot about and I really see this in my role as a kind of producer, programmer. Audiences just want joy at the moment. People really want to just have a nice time and a bit of escapism. And a murder mystery is a really fun example of that. It's just a romp. And I think particularly, when we think about access, it's very tempting to sort of get holier than thou about it and make it really moralistic. We're all just having a really silly time playing with mustaches. It's great.
Obviously, because mustaches are the best thing to play with.
Yeah. Everybody wants to be Poirot.
Exactly. Quite right. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Take care.
We really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to support the podcast further, you can choose to upgrade your subscription on Substack. But most of all, we'd just love it if you told your friends about what we're up to. Thanks for listening.